Good morning, everybody. This is Dominic from Faith Lutheran Church. I want to welcome you for the fourth Sunday of Lent. And today, in our second reading, then St. Paul is saying that once again that Jesus came to start a transformation of the world, to redeem the world, that it is a new day, a new creation, and Jesus calls this God's kingdom. And of course we know that we collaborate with Jesus, we collaborate with God in building that kingdom. And then we have the first reading, and then the first reading from Joshua. You have the process of the Israelites settling in the promised land. And the basic theme of that reading is that God keeps his promises. But I think what I would really like to do today is get to the gospel. This is probably my very favorite parable that Jesus tells us. And we oftentimes call it the prodigal son. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it to you, stop, and then make comments at that time. So bear with me as I get my cell phone that has the gospel on it here. Okay? So, now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." And therefore Jesus identifies himself with the sinners of his day. And this is they disapprove of him. Okay? And one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that these scribes, which were a Jewish-type lawyer, and the Pharisees, were caught up and centered in hundreds of rules and regulations. And as we will see, what they miss is compassion. And here's the big lesson for all of us, is that God does not think the way we think. And we can, as we will see, we can be really thankful for that. Okay? If I had $1 for everyone who has been in a discussion about the prodigal son, who thinks that the father is loosey-goosey in dealing with his son, and people who say, well, you know, the elder son was correct, and all of that. And the point is, well, you know what? God doesn't care about that, human thinking. God's thinking is very different from ours. So here we go. He told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." You have to remember what the law was in Israel during the time of Jesus. And during that time, the elder son got the majority of the property, but the younger son would get something. And the younger son wanted that something now. In other words, he didn't wait for his father to die. He acted as if his father was dead already. So you think the father would say, no way, but he doesn't. Listen, again, God doesn't think the way we think. So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. Just the fact that the younger son left home, right? is to be criticized. And then he goes and he squanders all of the money that his dad is giving to him, the property. Yeah? When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. You see, this is really bad news, because pork or the pigs were considered dirty animals, forbidden animals in Jewish law. So that makes the younger son even look worse. So he went and hired. Okay, I read that. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.'" Okay, so some who listen to this said, well, the younger son is manipulating the father. Well, that may be true. But he did confess that he did wrong. And now he's planning on asking his father to punish him by being one of his hired hands. I think this is very, very important. Okay? Okay. So he set off and went to his father, but while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. I hope everyone hears that. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Okay, a patriarch, an important person like that, would never run to his son, would never run to anybody. Okay, that's human thinking. But the father here is simple for God. God does that. God runs toward any of us who want to be back home in a good relationship with God and with others. So then the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." And here is the point. The father was not interested in the confession. He was not interested in punishing him. So he stops his son and says, basically, "I am not interested in any of this. I am rejoicing, absolutely rejoicing, that you have returned home." You see, this is the way God thinks. All right, a human father would punish the son first, and then welcome him back, maybe. Okay, all right, and then. But the father said to the slaves, "Quickly bring out a robe." That robe, everybody, is for a son. The best one, you see, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger. This is a signet ring. In those days when a contract was signed, they had a paste there, and you put the ring in with an image. It's that made it legal, and the son was able to represent the father. So you see, he's restoring. God believes in restorative justice. He's restoring his son to sonship here. Okay. And sandals on his feet. Those sandals are the sandals of a free person. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Okay. Now we get to the elder son. And some of you may be saying, well, the elder son is right in what he says. And now his elder son was in the field. When he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked, what is going on? He replied, your brother has come and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound. Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. Okay? So the elder son is like those Pharisees and scribes. They're caught up with rules and regulations, and therefore he had difficulties with compassion and understanding the compassion of his father. So his father says, but when the son came back, then the father said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. There you have it. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead, has come to life, he was lost, and has been found. So once again, I want to emphasize that the son, is pushing compassion out of the picture, and all he's stuck on, are the rules and the regulations. I have a cousin in Illinois, and I was visiting. And he complained to me about this mafia head who had died. He said, yes, he died, and is being buried in the church. Well, what had happened is he made a last-minute confession and received the sacrament of the sick, and he died, and now he's being buried in the parish church. And my cousin says, I have done everything right. I go to Mass every week. I go to confession, etc., etc., etc. And what he was failing to see was the compassion of God. And therefore, many of us could do the very same thing. Mm-hmm. So we celebrate a compassion of God that has no limits. It has no limits, my friends. Amen.